Notable running backs on a bye. How we kick things off. Kyren Williams, that's a big one. Aaron Jones, who did not play in the second half with the hip injury, so he will get much-needed rest. Kareem Hunt coming off the big week. Devon Achane with the concussion also has a bye. Raheem Mostert's been hurt a lot of this year. He also gets a much-needed bye. So it feels like, Matthew, it's kind of the right time for 3 out of the 5 of these guys.
A lot of big names that are on bye this week. Robert Saleh, not on that list, but also
he's got a couple bye weeks ahead of him.
He's not active this week, unfortunately. All right. So, look, I think first off, I wanted to mention, again, Devon Achane and Aaron Jones, you just mentioned, they're not going to play this week. But if you have those guys and you don't necessarily, it may be tough in a bye week to just use a roster spot on somebody that isn't going to play this week. But Ty Chandler's out there in a bunch of leagues, right? He's had 7 career games with 12 or more touches. He's averaging almost 12 fantasy points per game. He looked good filling in for Jones at the end of it. And how about Jaylen Wright? 13 touches, 86 yards in week 5. Again, Achane in the concussion protocol. Raheem Mostert is somebody who has struggled with injuries throughout his career. He came back in this game, but 2 guys that I think probably should be rostered in more leagues, again, especially if you have Jones and or Achane.
Can I just say with the Dolphins, it was like no one paid attention to Dolphins-Pats 15-10 because it was one of the worst games that you can imagine. But they won that game, and now they're 1 game out of the division lead. I think that's quietly a huge thing in fantasy because all indications are Tua is going to come back.
Right.
That has been the indication. So guys like, well, obviously Tyreek, but like Jalen Waddle, Achane, like I think they're going to be season-long relevant. Whereas if they lost that game, then all of a sudden you're 1 loss away from the Colts next week. So maybe he doesn't come back or whatever. Now I think the expectation is this Dolphins offense is going to get back.
And I think that's a great point because, by the way, if I'm sitting there in a league and I'm 4-1, I'm 3-2, I feel good about my.
Try to get Jalen Waddle.
Exactly. I think you could. There's likely a team in your league that has one of those Dolphins players that's desperate, that's 1-4, that's 2-3, that needs to work, and all of a sudden, hey, you've got a couple of guys on bye, and you're like, hey, I'll give you something for, I'll give you a usable guy. I'll give you Kareem Hunt for Jaylen Waddle. I need to use Kareem Hunt this week. Well, I mean, he's on a bye. But you know what I mean? Like, I'm just trying to think of a mid-tier, kind of a mid-tier running back, right? Like a
J.K. Dobbins?
Yeah, he's a little bit too good. But I'm just like, I'll give you, think of a good example here. Give you Tyler Algier. I'll give you like a usable, you know what I mean? Like, not great, but like somebody who's usable. I'll give you like Bucky Irving or Rachaad White. I'll give you one of those guys for like Jaylen Waddle, because again, with the idea that like Waddle's not going to be great for the next 2 weeks, but we think Tua comes back, and then suddenly you've gotten a nice player at below market value.
All right, a quick mention here of guys that do not meet our threshold, but check your league just in case. Rico Dowdle, 44%. Trey Sermon, 48%.
Our threshold here is players need to be available in more than 50% of Yahoo leagues for us to consider them for the waiver wire show. But to your point, Rico Dowdle and Trey Sermon in that order are not 100% rostered. So if those guys are still available in your league, we would prefer them over any of the people we're just about to mention, especially Dowdle had 22 touches last week, back-to-back games with over 13 fantasy points. It just looks like Ezekiel Elliott is done for the Cowboys. That was an impressive performance by Dowdle on Sunday night on the road at Pittsburgh in a game they needed to win. And look, Jonathan Taylor, as long as he's out, Trey Sermon got 67% of the running back touches against the Jaguars. It is going to be the Trey Sermon show as long as JT is not playing.
Our top running back on waivers, Tank Bigsby of the Jaguars. He's got the Bears in London. 77% available, Jay. And a noteworthy thing to mention here, Doug Peterson, Travis Etienne got popped in the shoulder again. He'll be okay. This backfield the pendulum's starting to swing towards Tank, who looks really good.
Yeah, and he's just looked significantly better than Travis Etienne all season, really. And I think that he obviously shouldn't be available in any league at this point because of the opportunity. It's not quite a Cam Akers, Kyren Williams thing from last year, but there are elements of that where it wouldn't be shocking at all if Tank Bigsby becomes the guy. Now, Peterson has reaffirmed that Etienne is still the starter, he's still the guy, but it doesn't take much. Like, there are jobs on the line in Jacksonville. I don't think there's going to be some kind of irrational allegiance to Travis Etienne for the sake of it. If Tank Bigsby continues to outperform, I suspect that he's going to become the guy in that backfield.
Yeah, it's clear. And by the way, the Bears, for as good as their defense has been this year, they're bottom 10 in terms of most fantasy points allowed to running backs. And Tank Bigsby, just to the eye test, looks better than Etienne. Doug Peterson's like, okay, well, if a team that's playing for first place in the AFC East can get rid of their head coach, what happens when it's 1-4? 1-4 when, again, my owner Shad Khan comes out and says the time for winning is now, and they make a bunch of splashy free agent moves. Brian Thomas is coming on. So Doug Peterson knows he needs to win to keep his job. He's on the hot seat. So one of the ways you win is putting your best players in a position to win. Like, whatever he says to the press, Tank Bigsby's been the better running back.
Yeah. We could have 2 coaches in a row not come back from London. If the Jags lose to the Bears.
Seriously.
Yeah, we'll have them at the Crystal Palace training ground.
Back-to-backs?
Yeah. So that's the other thing is that, yeah.
So he actually might come back from London while they stay.
Yeah.
Plot twist.
Tough scene for the Jags.
Brutal.
Yeah, definitely a plot twist. It is worth noting, that there is no running back that has a better avoided tackle rate or yards after contact per attempt this season than Tank Bigsby. It's the second year that a tank is making noise in fantasy football.
Yeah.
Because last year, Tank Dell.
I know, and Tank Dell has now fallen down the tank power rankings, I would argue. He's now the number 2 tank.
He's now the number 2 tank.
Tank 2.
Yeah. Number 3, of course, Tank McNamara.
Okay.
That was 4.
Interesting.
He keep 4?
Yeah.
No, number 4?
I don't know another Tank. Tank McNamara is an old-time cartoon.
Men named Tank, Google search. First time I've ever searched that one. I don't know any of these people. Tank Abbott, Tank Carter, Tank Black. Nah, nothing.
Not happening?
No.
I don't know any of those people either.
And neither do I. Then we'll move on to someone we do know, and we're very excited, appears on Waiver Wire today. Tyrone Tracy, Matthew. Welcome to the party. That's right.
That's our guy.
That is our
you
guy.
And I in the preseason.
Every dynasty draft.
Yes.
He's on every dynasty roster I've ever had.
Same.
It's a great feeling now. 77% available. Get in on the party if you can. This is the Giants' best running back, and he showed that against the Seahawks as Devin Singletary was out. 18 carries, 129 yards. 2 targets. I think they need to get him going in the pass game even more because that's where he's best. But he just looked great in this Giants offense as they had a huge upset, Matthew.
Most rushing yards in a game by a Giants running back since Saquon Barkley in Week 10 of 2022. Once again, Brian Daboll also coaching for his job. And this is, I get it that he's loyal to Devin Singletary. They work together in Buffalo, but Tyrone Tracy gave them a burst on the road at Seattle, a desperate Seahawks team, and came through. So I don't know how Tyrone Tracy goes back in the bottle, as it were, right? I don't know that he's taken this job over once Devin Singletary gets over the groin injury, but there's no question he has earned a much bigger role on a team that is devoid of offensive talent. Again, in a game in which they didn't have Malik Neighbors either. But Tyrone Tracy, a big game here. We've always said, you and I, this is one of the reasons we liked him preseason. We said, I don't know if it happens initially, but second half of the year, Tyrone Tracy will eventually get going. Meanwhile, by the way, I drafted him in the League of Assholes, and I've had so many injuries, Rashee Rice and whatever. I had to let him go, and then try to get him back. And Connor Rogers outbid me, I think, by like $1.
Well,
so
we're going to get into the state of affairs and the standings in that league, which are absolutely glorious.
I'm sure we are. Yeah, League of Assholes.
Just on Tyrone Tracy, tangentially related to that, undercovered, not really addressed that much in the constantly mentioned mainstream media. Daniel Jones has been good for a month now. He's been perfectly fine.
Adequate, competent. Yes.
He's been, in EPA, if you take out week 1 against arguably the best defense in the league and the Vikings, and I get that that's 20% of the season, so we probably shouldn't take it out, but if we do, he is 6th in EPA. Like, he's been very solid. And
where's Aaron Rodgers? As long as we're talking about New York quarterbacks.
Scrolling. He's 20th since week 2. So, yeah, Daniel Jones has been better than Aaron Rodgers, I would say.
Since week 2.
Yeah, since week 2. Rodgers was okay against the Niners in week 1. But no, Daniel Jones. And look, fantasy-wise, all that means, I think, in terms of what's actionable, is that this can be a competent, serviceable offense, whereas it was looking like after week 1 that maybe it wouldn't be at all. But
For sure. It absolutely can be, and we'll talk about Daniel Jones coming up in a little bit here. But, yeah, we're big fans of Tyrone Tracy here at the Happy Hour.
Roschon Johnson, our next running back here, 80% available. We mentioned the Bears have the London game against the Jags, and then a bye after that. Jay, only 10 carries, but 2 touchdowns for Roschon last week.
Yeah, and again, there's just a lot of uncertainty in this backfield when you consider what DeAndre Swift, how up and down he has been. Now, Roschon, he played 23 out of 74 snaps. That's not incredible, but at the same time, there is opportunity here. DeAndre Swift played 49 of the 74 snaps. I think this Bears offense just in general is trending up. Caleb Williams, that was the best game by far that he has played as he gets more control of this offense. I think people are just like the Bears a bit, like what are they really doing? Like they're 2.5-point favorites over Trevor Lawrence on a neutral field. Like that's an impressive, I guess, indicator of where they're trending. So Roschon, he's a guy who should be rostered everywhere. And there's a chance that this Bears team could just get progressively better as the season goes on and Roschon could be the lead running back on a playoff team.
He's averaging over 11 points per game in the last 3 weeks. He's averaging about 10 touches a game. And the past 2 games, like he's gotten 3 goal-to-go carries. Like we thought after last week, DeAndre Swift is clearly taking over this backfield. But what this means is like they've just completely moved on, it feels like, from Khalil Herbert. And it's a 2 running back backfield. DeAndre Swift is obviously the lead. But to your point, Jay, Roschon Johnson's going to get enough work in a deeper league to be flex viable. And obviously if anything were to happen to DeAndre Swift, he becomes even more interesting. But, 10 touches a game on a improving offense, to your point, and he's getting some short yardage work, makes Roschon Johnson pretty interesting.
He's also just like kind of prime example case one of guys who could take over where the number one incumbent guy doesn't have enough pedigree to hold on to the job based on pedigree alone. I think ETN falls into that zone now, like Rashad White, Bucky Irving, the Denver situation in general. These are the situations where you really want to target the backup.
Matthew, how do you handle the Texans' backfield right now? As we're waiting for Joe Mixon to come back, obviously Cam Akers is on this roster and involved. Daria Ngumbayale, 99% available. I mean, but he gets a lot of work when Mixon doesn't play.
So. He had 21 touches in Week 5. He played 67% of the snaps. Over the past 2 weeks, he's averaging over 15 fantasy points per game. Having said that about Ogunbowale, he's their passing down back, right? Akers is more of the lead guy, and so they're on the road at New England this week. Not a game that you expect the Patriots to blow out the Texans, and they're in trailing mode. So I will have Akers ranked higher than Ogunbowale this week, assuming Mixon is out once again. In the 3 games since Joe Mixon has been injured, he's averaging 11.3 touches per game. He's averaging 9.3 fantasy points per game. He got into the end zone last week as well. It is a bit of a committee, but I rank, again, it sort of depends on what you need, like long-term. If you're in a deeper PPR league, there's certainly a chance that Ogunbowale is available in almost every league, whereas Akers is not. But I think especially for this week, I prefer Akers to Ogunbowale just because against New England, I think they're going to be able to, it's certainly going to be a close game, or if not, they'll be leading. I don't think they'll be trailing where they need to use Ogunbowale in the passing game as much as they have been the last 2 weeks.
Yeah, also, like, big concerns around Joe Mixon and the lack of clarity there. He is on slap them like a grape, and I'm worried about that. I would be more worried if my team wasn't a mix of the 27 Yankees and the 85 Bears. But Joe Mixon, the fact that he practiced and then setback, and also just the wording from D'Amico Ryans, still trying to figure that out. It's like he sprained his ankle like a month ago. Like, how are we trying to still figure this out? So concerns there, and Akers and Ogunbowale are interesting flies in that offense.
In the same game, Jay, Patriots, Antonio Gibson, he's available in 62% of leagues. He's coming off a week where I thought there'd be more carries, 6 rushes, 52 yards. You'd like to see him involved in the passing game even more, but he's out there in over half the leagues.
Yeah, he is. And look, he played 28 snaps. Ramondre Stevenson played 28 snaps of the 60 total. For the Pats offense, this seems just like a true committee at the moment. Stevenson still with more upside, but Gibson, there is still the opportunity for him to take more of a role there.
More of a deeper league ad, but just we thought Stevenson was on and I think he still is on a very short leash because of all the fumbling issues. It seemed like the press around the beat reporters around the Patriots indicating going into last week that they thought Gibson would overtake Ramondre Stevenson. Maybe that was just them floating a balloon to try to light a fire under Stevenson. It seemed to have worked. Having said that, though, very quietly, Antonio Gibson, again, this is deep league, but at least 55 yards from scrimmage in 3 of the past 4. He actually leads this Patriots backfield in yards per carry and yards per target. So given the short leash on Stevenson, Gibson is, again, interesting-ish in deeper leagues where you're sort of desperate. When you're in a league like the League of Assholes and every single player with a pulse is gone,
you got to dig deep.
You got to dig deep.
To recap, Matthew's running back waiver targets for week number 6, Tank Bigsby, Tyrone Tracy, Roschon Johnson, the Texans duo of Cam Akers and Daria Ogunbowale, Antonio Gibson, Justice Hill. We did mention Jaylen Wright and Ty Chandler as well.
Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotoWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.